INEC says preparations for rescheduled elections are at appreciable level.
All issues relating to the delivery of materials were identified and virtually addressed. Ballot papers, result sheets, and a host of non-sensitive materials are now in location across of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory.
Presidency reacts to ballot box snatching mixed-up messages.
Youth reorientation and man rechanneling as financier to national security.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we focus on election postponement, logistics, and operational matters.
All right, since the electoral umpire, INEC, took the nation unawares with the postponement of the presidential and National Assembly elections, there have been a flurry of comments, analysis, and commentaries.
All right, no doubt about that, Claire. Now, the announcement certainly came to many as a rude shock because of the timing and more particularly the resources already committed by candidates, political parties, the electorate, or observers.
Of course, one of the main reasons given by the chairman for the postponement of the scheduled elections was that of logistics and operational challenges. Now, many have been trying to understand, especially given the fact that INEC had over 4 years since the last elections to prepare for this crucial assignment and, of course, moment.
All right. Now, many also say that the logistic challenges could have been identified early on and ameliorated. Otherwise, the postponement of the elections could have been communicated much earlier as well, so as to save the nation the attendant embarrassment and cost.
All right. Now, Nigerians have since accepted the new date and are working towards it all around the country. That is the situation. But the question is, what is INEC doing to put behind it the initial logistic challenges, of course, that it said derailed its plans? Now, how can it plan for a smoother conduct of the rescheduled elections? That's, of course, talking about its ICT platforms.
Now, these are very pertinent questions that you have raised, and that is why this morning we intend to engage experts in the field of logistics as well as ICT to get their perspectives on what can be done to ensure that there are better arrangements, especially with regard to the transportation, warehousing, and distribution of sensitive and non-sensitive materials. It's on that note, of course, we'd like to welcome you to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for being with us. We're on Africa's largest television network, the Nigerian Television Authority. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
I am Claire Dilabo Abdul Razak. The pleasure is always ours having you join us on the program. Of course, we'll also hopefully today bring you the complimentary segments of the program, talking about newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and arts and entertainment, always taking the rare. Right now, Comfort Amodu is in our news studio ready to give us the morning news. Comfort, good to have you with us.
Hello, Claire and Kingsley. Here is the news. There is high hope that the elections scheduled for this Saturday will hold as preparations have reached appreciable level. INEC Chairman Professor Mahmoud Yakubu gave the assurance at a media conference in Abuja.
Issues relating to the delivery of materials were identified and virtually addressed. Ballot papers, result sheets, and a host of non-sensitive materials are now in location across of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. I want to report that we have achieved 95% configuration of the 180,000 smart card readers, and this process is going to be completed early morning on Wednesday.
And President Muhammadu Buhari has again asked Nigerians to brave the challenges of the postponed elections to cast their ballots this Saturday. President Buhari, in a statement, assured Nigerians of a conducive electoral atmosphere to freely exercise their civic duty.
must not be dampened. I urge all Nigerian voters to brave the challenges and ensure that they cast their votes. This government assures all voters of their protection before, during, and after the polls. I also thank Nigerians for their patience and trust in our government to deliver credible elections where your votes will count. Your votes will count as we are committed to rid our electoral process of vote buying and manipulations. Thank you, and God bless the people and the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the presidency says President Muhammadu Buhari is coming that anyone found snatching ballot boxes during next weekend's election would face the wrath of the government. Should be seen as a strong message against the long history of savagery associated with elections in the country. A statement from Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu. The Presidential Media Office says snatching ballot boxes entails putting the lives of innocent Nigerians at risk, adding that President Muhammadu Buhari has the safety and security of Nigerians in mind. Garba Shehu expressed concern over those attacking the president's comment, adding that the president should be praised rather than criticized for issuing the warning to potential ballot box snatchers. And APC stalwarts have continued to speak on the advantages the one-week postponement of the Presidential and National Assembly is to the party. Bauchi State Governor Mohammed Abdullahi and the National Coordinator of APC Presidential Support Committee, Senator Godswill Akpabio, at a media interface in Abuja, reaffirmed that electorate across the country are ready and committed to the task of re-electing President Muhammadu Buhari in view of his honest leadership and passion towards building a stronger democracy. They attributed the president's statement against those planning to disrupt the electioneering and even voting processes as a clear testimony of his determination to repositioning the country to the path of greatness and promote its democratic values.
Because we keep on complaining of the lack of free, fair, transparent elections in Nigeria. And Mr. President is bent on ensuring that the 2019 elections are free, fair, and transparent. And if it takes stopping criminals to ensure the transparency of that election, so be it.
And it showed clearly that was the president, not for the elite, but for the common people, and that Nigerians still repose a lot of hope in him. And we, as party stalwarts, were very, very impressed. APC is waxing stronger and stronger.
And now a crucial meeting of the top level of the nation's security apparatus has ended in Abuja with a firm resolve towards ensuring that eligible voters are not in any way hindered from exercising their franchise in the rescheduled general elections. The meeting, presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari, noted that significant improvement in the security situation across the crisis-prone areas and took far-reaching measures towards sustaining the peace enterprise for a hitch-free electoral process.
We are ready for elections. We do not believe that the level of security challenges will preclude elections not taking place all over our states.
The Boko Haram bask in the oxygen of publicity by attacking my convoy, by targeting my person. They have gotten the much needed boost. I'm ready to pay the supreme price if needs be. No matter how long the night is, it must give way to the light of the dawn.
Every Nigerian is encouraged to come out on the election day and cast his or her votes without any fear of molestation. The security personnel are ready and prepared to protect everybody.
Reorientation and rechanneling of the minds of youths by useful engagement has been identified as pivotal towards addressing national security. This was brought to the fore at the 2019 National Security Seminar with the theme Youth Budge in Nigeria, Implications for National Security.
And indeed, the emasculation of the youth in every aspect of our national life has equally resulted in a myriad of socioeconomic challenges, which are the consequences of what we call the mismanagement of the youth population.
They are disturbed or worried about engagement, empowerment, and employment. That is the problem. And unless we look critically at these three words I've mentioned, we'll have difficulty trying to resolve the tendencies they have that might also lead to insecurity.
Youth in themselves could be very useful in national development. Nigeria is blessed that we have youth in a large population of youth that could develop our economy.
The seminar is to come up with recommendations that will be presented for adoption by policymakers for implementation to address youth restiveness and crime in the country. And as part of its renewed commitment to conduct free and fair elections, all staff of the Independent National Electoral Commission who will participate in the 2019 general elections have taken an oath of neutrality.
All sensitive materials which were fully deployed to all the 21 local government areas have now been returned to the vault of the CBN as directed, 100%. INEC shall endeavor to conduct the 2019 general election in the most efficient and professional manner based on global best practices.
The People's Democratic Party has implored Nigerians to come out en masse and vote for the candidate of their choice in the rescheduled presidential election. This was the unanimous call of the national chairman Uche Secondus and the presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar at the party's 84th National Executive Committee's meeting in Abuja.
We believe in PDP, that we are law-abiding, we know the law, the Constitution is there.
And that wraps up the news segment. The program continues shortly. Good morning. Following the postponement of the Presidential and National Assembly election, Independent Marketers Association directed its members across the country to reduce petroleum pump price with 5 naira as part of its corporate social responsibility and their resolve to contribute to sustainable democracy in Nigeria.
Instead of them to sell 145 naira per litre, to bring it down to 140 between today, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. At least to encourage people to go back again en masse to exercise their own franchise.
And they are reducing the money of fuel. We are buying it for 145 naira. Now it came down for 140.
I think this improvement, I think step by step make a long journey. I think we are expecting the government again to try. Again, I reduce from that 140 to 120.
And in other business developments, the 2019 January price watch for some selected food items released by the National Bureau of Statistics indicate that 1 kilogram of tomato decreased by 2.39% year-on-year to 265.49 naira in January. A dozen of agric eggs medium size increased year-on-year by 7.49% and 0.62% month-on-month to 469.85 naira in January 2019 from 466.97 naira in December 2018, while the average price of one egg increased year-on-year by 8.58% and decreased month-on-month by minus 0.93% to 42.18 naira in January 2019 from 42.58 naira in December 2008. The average price of 1 kilogram of tomato decreased year-on-year by minus 2.39% and month-on-month by 2.22% to 265.49 in January 2019 from 271.51 naira in December 2018. Meanwhile, the average price of 1 kilogram of rice increased year-on-year by 1.46% and decreased month-on-month by minus 1.22% to 366.04 naira in January 2019 from 370.57 naira in November last year. And the average price of 1 kilogram of yam tuber decreased year-on-year by minus 6.75% and month-on-month by minus 0.68% to 211.21 naira in January 2019 from the 212.65 naira in December 2018. In relation to this, some traders gave a situation report on some of the commodities in the market.
The price for the market increased. Before, I'm selling frozen food. Even a carton of chicken, we were buying Orobohad, 10,000, but now a carton is 13,000. To know that there's big difference.
With business news and comfort, I'm Modu.
Thank you very much, Comfort, for the update on business. Next on the program is Newspaper Review.
Right, if you've just tuned in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and right on time as we welcome Bayo Toyebi for Newspaper Review. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, well, let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust, from top to bottom, says Kajuru killings. That's the kicker. El-Rufai posts death toll at 130. That's on page 4 in greater detail. Bama is proof of source of $8.4 million insufficient. That's an ongoing trial. It is on page 7. GDP growth reflects exchange rate stability. And a lead story, according to the paper, is exclusive, saying why Saturday's election failed. And the story continues right up on page 5. With 3 riders, INEC ready for February 23rd. Already there, it's in quotes. And materials arrive in all states, card readers ready to go. You can see the INEC chairman and some of the election observers yesterday in Abuja. And right at the foot of the front page of Daily Trust, Dapchi parents and students pray and weep for Leah Sharibu, page 4. Atiku, that's the kicker, APC INEC plotting to manipulate card readers. And Ghana expels 723 Nigerians over prostitution and cybercrime. Right, Claire.
All right, Nigerian Tribune says, has the caption 95% of card readers configured, ballot papers, result sheets now in states. That's coming from INEC chairman. And there's a rider there that says, ballot box snatchers should be dealt with according to Electoral Act. No INEC staff in DSS custody, page 10. You can find the details of that. And also similar reports on the front page of the Nigerian pilot. We are prepared, says INEC chair, details of that on page 4. And a number of riders there insist Commission will act in line with Electoral Act. Voters and ad hoc staff will be fully protected. No third party involved in configuration of smart card readers. Debunks rumors that INEC officials were arrested. Bayo.
Right. Let's start from the human interest angle. It was a year by yesterday when the terrorist group raided Government Science Technical College, Dapchi. Students of that college yesterday gathered in prayer session to pray for their schoolmates still held by the insurgents for refusing to renounce her faith. Amid tears, they cried and prayed in the Christian and Muslim way, praying for her release soon. Secretary to the Parent-Teacher Association, Kachala Bukar, said fasting and special prayers were held to seek divine intervention, and especially so to remind the world about the poor girl. At the home of Mr. Sharibu and Rebecca Sharibu, prayers were also held, and the parents were said to be away at Adamawa. But an aunt to the still being held girl, her aunt Helakumi Manasseh, asked that the negotiations for her niece's release should be taken the more seriously. On the story of Kajuru that Kingsley read earlier on, the governor of Kaduna State has clarified that 130 persons were killed in villages in Kajuru. Governor El Rufai declared that as governor of the state, I will be irresponsible to stand before the media and say something has happened that has not happened. It may be recalled that the governor last Friday said 66 people were killed in 8 Maro settlements in Kajuru. Among those killed were 22 children and 12 women. The violent incident and election atrocity fusion center, VIAFOG, said it contacted residents and community leaders in Kajuru and also transed all possible sources. And they claimed that they said the 2 additional fact-finding missions were sent to verify the claims, and they concluded that, sadly, the alleged attack and killing claimed by the governor did not occur. And there are indications that gunmen had actually attacked an Ungwambarde and Adara community, and the following attack on Friday was indeed reprisal for that attack. And he says, as a governor, I receive security briefing every morning, and I work on that basis. Anyone who wants to contradict what I have said should have superior information. He said, the first said that I lied. Then they said it didn't happen. And then they started saying the number is not as announced. The Commissioner of Police for Kaduna State, Ahmed Abdurrahman, says 11 suspects have been arrested, and the governor has vowed that all those arrested will be brought to justice. Meanwhile, the President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday held a closed-door meeting with security chief. It was attended by the Minister of Defense, the Chief of Defense Staff, Service Chief, Directors General of DSS and National Intelligence Agency, as well as the Inspector General of Police and the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. Also in attendance were governors of Adamawa, Borno, and Kaduna State. Some papers report that the meeting was to appraise security situation, particularly in states that have been perceived as flashpoints that could hamper smooth conduct of the polls. The Acting Inspector General of Police, who provided brief after the meeting, said that the security agencies have resolved to provide further security so that every electorate will come out and cast their vote without molestation. The security personnel are ready and prepared to protect everybody. And he warned, ballot snatching, vote buying, and thuggery will not be condoned. Anyone planning to use thug should have a rethink.
All right, Bayo, let's take a look at the Leadership newspaper. Leadership, banking sector credit rises by 2.9% to 15 trillion naira. And below that, America cannot crush us, says Huawei. It is on page 6. Stop overheating the polity, INEC warns politicians. With 2 riders, denies arrest of staff by security agents. And Presidency and PDP bicker over President Buhari's order on riggers. President Buhari meets service chiefs and governors in Villa and perfects security arrangements for polls. That's the rider to that headline. And then right at the foot of the page, atop the strip advert, they have the Kajuru where death toll rising to 130 according to El Rufai is there. Boko Haram, I'm ready to pay the supreme price. That's according to Borno governor. Appeal Court sacks Balogun Fulani's Kwara APC ESCO. That's on page 8. And Leah Sharibu's father decries daughter's 365 days in captivity. Page 6. And on page 27, Ogun killing. Customs detains 4 officers. That's on page 27 once again. Bayo.
Yes. The Independent National Electoral Commission says it has resolved to conduct a free and fair election and they assure everybody that the election will be credible. At a World Press Conference, chairman of the commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, assured that all materials meant for Saturday's polls have been distributed. He also said 95% of car readers, 180,000 in them, has been reconfigured, and the 5% that is left will be configured, completed by Wednesday, that is today. As part of his confidence building to all stakeholders, he clarified no INEC official or commissioner has been arrested. He, however, enjoined politicians to desist from making inciting statements. He said, stop overheating the polity. The lifting of the ban on campaign was not a license for spewing incendiary comments. He enjoined politicians to play the game by the rules and no matter their grievances. He stressed that all violations of the electoral rule and laws must be treated in accordance with the Electoral Act. There will be a daily briefing on the situation every day. This is the measures that is to be taken by INEC to continue to boost confidence. Meanwhile, there are claims and counterclaims, and it refers to the alarm that the INEC chairman has raised. The leading political party, APC, and PDP are engaging in claims and counterclaims. The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party alleges that the ruling party has trained hackers in China to hack smart card readers. The APC is also not left behind. It is demanding the removal of the resident electoral commissioner for Abia, Akwa Ibom, and Cross River on the allegations that they are working in cohort with a main opposition to rig elections in the favor of, in their favor. The danger here is if the two leading parties are deliberately undermining the integrity of the election even before it comes out. And that does not all go well. And I think in consonance with the peace accords they signed, they should all now concentrate on their campaign, what they intend to do, and convince people to come out and vote. Because this kind of comments will tend to intimidate and frighten even the electors.
All right, Bayo, thanks. I'm just wondering, what are the issues in the campaign or in the elections? Do we still remember the issues?
Yes.
If we were to proceed on this basis right up until Friday, Saturday, I'm sure voters will be asking themselves when they get into the polling booth, say, look, okay, what were the issues one more time? So what am I going to vote for? Yeah, because everything, of course, has been beclouded by, as you said, personal attacks and then the lingering concerns over the fiasco attending the takeoff of the elections last Saturday. All right, Bayo, thank you very much for being with us. We hope that the parties will return to the core issues in their campaigns and therefore proper messaging to the electorate. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be getting ahead and discussing the issues of logistics and ICT with regard to the elections.
Following a careful review of the implementation of its logistics and operational plan and the determination to conduct free, fair, and credible elections, the Commission came to the conclusion that proceeding with the election as scheduled is no longer feasible. Consequently, the Commission has decided to reschedule the Presidential and National Assembly elections to Saturday, 23rd February 2019. Furthermore, the Governorship, State House of Assembly, and Federal Capital Territory Area Council elections are rescheduled to Saturday, 9th March 2019. This will afford the Commission the opportunity to address identified challenges in order to maintain the quality of our elections. This was a difficult decision for the Commission to take, but necessary for the successful delivery of elections and the consolidation of our democracy.
These were the reasons stated by the INEC chairman, Mahmoud Yakubu, at a media briefing after the postponement of the 2019 general elections. Many Nigerians received the news with shock, especially in view of the repeated assurances by the Commission that all was set for the elections. Announcing the postponement of elections barely hours to the commencement of the voting process is not new in Nigeria, particularly since 2011. In some cases, such pronouncements come after the process has even commenced. Since 2011, INEC has blamed the postponement of elections on logistic issues, which is critical and also an impeding factor in conducting a free, fair and credible elections. The Commission, however, says it has successfully conducted 195 reruns and off-season election across the country since the last election in 2015, even though such reruns cannot be compared to the proper general elections. Many Nigerians lauded INEC for the steps taken to address some of the problems identified to avoid disenfranchising eligible voters. But on the other hand, they believe INEC had enough time for preparation before the slated dates. And it may be recalled that in 2011, the National Assembly election scheduled for April 2nd, which commenced smoothly in states such as Lagos, Kaduna, Kebbi, Delta, Zamfara and Enugu, were later rescheduled by INEC, citing the fact that sensitive materials were deployed late. Again, in 2015, general elections were also postponed by 6 weeks due to the insecurity situation in the northeast. Since then, postponement of general elections due to logistic reasons has become a common phrase in Nigeria, even though many would have thought by now INEC would have developed strategies that will address logistic issues once and for all. With the presidential elections now rescheduled to Saturday, 23rd February 2019, while the governorship, State Assembly and FCT area councils now 2nd March 2019, observers believe INEC officials should be ready to conduct a well-coordinated and free exercise. Guest on Good Morning Nigeria today will be answering questions bordering on logistic issues and how it can be addressed. They may even look at lessons learned so far from this postponement.
All right, joining us in the studios now to discuss this issue in further detail, would like to first welcome Mani Ochubojo. He's a lawyer and a transport consultant. Mani, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Kinsley.
Okay, also here with us in the studios is Ahmed Mustafa Yahuza. He's of the Cyber Security Department of the Nigerian Information Technology Development Agency, NITA. Yahuza, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Yahuza reminds me of something, Kingsley. Good to have you, Mr. Yahuza. But let me welcome, of course, an ICT expert, Abdul Hakim Ajijola. He's a well-known face here. He's also Chair, Consultancy Support Services Limited. Mr. Ajijola, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the honor of inviting me.
All right. And we go to our Lagos Network Center, and we have Jubril Ibrahim, who is President, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. Mr. Ibrahim, thank you very much for joining me, or joining us, rather.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria, and thank you for having me.
We'll stay with you. Our first question goes to you. We know just before we came on air, we were talking about precedents that have been set, but can you give us a sense of understanding, just for starters, what is the nature of a logistic challenge that could elude a whole electoral umpire, electoral body, INEC, for 4 years or even few months, but so critical that it compelled postponement of an election even at 2 a.m. on election day?
Thank you. For starters, I think I would start by saying that elections are about the most important activities you can have in any democracy. And having said that, we will all understand that logistics can mar or make any election. And for that reason, we must be able to look at the whole gamut of the logistics value chain as we conduct elections in this country. And I think it is proper for us to look at logistics with concern to the elections being an orderly and coordinated procedure for the warehousing, procurement first and foremost, warehousing, distribution and retrieval of election materials and personnel. And for you to be able to do that successfully, you must base your logistics on 4 cardinal points. And these points start with the planning, careful planning. You must go into some systematic coordination of the logistics system and processes. And then, of course, the careful implementation stage. And finally, you must put in place effective and strict control measures. Once we go this gamut, we believe if it is handled carefully, we should be able to have successful elections. But it is not out of place to say that there could be some things that are behind the scene that we are not seeing. But basically, for every logistics system, if you go it in this manner, systematically, you should be able to see a success of it. But let us also look at the fact that we have been conducting elections over this period, over a long period of time, as you have mentioned. And I know that at the planning stage, INEC contacted and consulted a lot of logistics concerned stakeholders. And at the end of the day, we expected that they were going to come up with a blueprint. But there were so many things that we thought they should have done, which we were not in the know whether they have done them or not. Particularly, since election is a going concern, it is expected that before every election, maybe a year and a half, we should be able to do a self-audit of our logistics value chain, and particularly get an independent person to conduct that audit for you from a neutral point of view, such that all the gaps that are apparent can be filled before the real conduct of the election. And I think, I'm not too sure if INEC did this, but by way of advice, these are some of the things that they should do in order to forestall some of these challenges that we're facing. They have mentioned quite a number of reasons, and out of them, the only many of them you can attribute to probably mismanagement. And there are basically 3 types of mismanagement when it comes to election or logistics, running a logistics system. And the first one could be out of ignorance, and particularly with the issue of bad weather that was mentioned. I think if INEC had worked with the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, they would have been able to have a weather forecast over a period of time that would determine how they fashion out their logistics operations. And ignorance of that may be a very serious consequence in what we do. Of course, there are other issues of mismanagement that could border on probably accidental mismanagement or intentional mismanagement. The first two, accidental and the first one I mentioned, could be managed. But when you have intentional mismanagement, that is very difficult to manage with, and contingency arrangements should be able to address those issues. Let me stop here for now.
All right, Jibril Ibrahim, thank you very much. We'll return to you to drill further into the points that you have indicated. But let's come back to our Abuja studios. Mani Ochuboju, give us a sense of what occurred to you when you heard that the chief reason for the shift in the polls had to do with the logistic nightmare that INEC now found itself.
Kingsley, it was a shock and a deeply, deeply embarrassing situation for the entire country, as it were. It immediately brings to mind the issue of the rehabilitation and improvement of our transportation system immediately, when logistics was being put as the main reason. And when you think of transportation, you begin to imagine the entire socio-economic and political system of the country standing on 4 structures. The structure it stands on is just like a table with 4 legs. Is your transportation. Those legs are your transportation. The transportation, I start with railway, then you have your waterways, you have your airways. I'm mentioning road network as the last. I'm mentioning it last because it seems to be the only one we tend to emphasize on. And when any of these 4 legs or structures that the entire political, socio-economic system stands on is crippled, it will invariably impact on the superstructure, on the processes, on our movement, on the growth, improvement of the other systems built on it. And in our case, in Nigeria, when the reason being given for the cancellation of election is logistics, it brings to the forefront the issue of the crippled railway system in Nigeria, the issue of the crippled waterway system in Nigeria. And Kingsley, we've had calls to discuss those issues here before. Now, when you have a structure that is crippled on 2 fronts, it will invariably impact on its mobility, on its efficiency, on its growth, and even its aspiration to be the giant of Africa. And in this instance, the crippled infrastructure has exposed us to international disgrace, as it were. That's one point. The second point is that listening to the INEC chairman and giving reasons for the cancellation, talking about operational and logistical reasons. My instinct as a lawyer is that, no, they are not legally tenable. You don't give reasons for your inefficiency, for your incompetence, for cancelling an election. A national election, the entire eyes of the entire world are on Nigeria. You don't do that. Furthermore, he even in his speech agreed that, oh, no, I have enough resources. You have enough resources. If you have enough resources, and enough for security reasons, then you must be able to provide for logistics, howsoever difficult they are. Now, I will avoid repeating some of the brilliant analysis of Jibril in Lagos. I'll keep to other aspects so that we'll have a more balanced conversation here.
Okay, let's bring in Ajijola. Ajijola, you know, when we hear logistics, of course, the first place our minds go to is, you know, movement, transport, and all that. But within the context of election and the electoral process, can you give us, you know, a sense of understanding of what logistics entail?
With these 2 logistics gurus, I think that might be a difficult call. But, you know, let's understand its background. Really, it's a military science. And really, it's all about handling and details of an operation, be it a military operation, be it a voting operation. And if I may digress a little bit, I think too many of us forget that the electoral process is not just voting. There are a whole series of things. And I think for me, as a Nigerian, my most critical concern that I think the public should have is, do we have confidence in the process? And will the winners and the losers have confidence that the process was relatively, or let's just say free and fair to a reasonable extent? And I think this is the key takeaway that we must think about. In addition to this, I think as a society, we have to be far more tolerant of failure, but not tolerant of incompetence. They are different. Things happen, things don't work sometimes, despite your best efforts and your best intentions. But if there's incompetence, that has to be dealt with. Now, I think also that we are in the heat of the moment. So this may not be the time really to unduly task INEC. Let's, you know, the horse is already out. We have to get this thing home. So let's get this election done. But after the election, I think, particularly starting with the chairman of INEC, he needs to ask his team 2 very fundamental questions. What did we do right? Because not everything is a shambles. Not everything went wrong. Remember, this is a long process. And don't forget also that all of us have a collective responsibility in the challenge. You may say, I have the budget. Was the budget released to me on time? Those are the kind of questions. The second issue that the INEC chairman needs to ask his team is, what could we do better? Not what did we do wrong. And the logic behind this is that we must move ourselves away from recrimination and blaming. Yes, there may be some people or some things to blame, but the issue is that let us be constructive. What can we do better? So for me, these are the critical questions that I would love to see the answers. And of course, below those questions, there are many other issues.
Okay, Ajijola, thank you very much. Let's bring in Ahmed Mustafa Yahuza. I would like you first, while we are still on logistics, I would like you to give us a sense of the role ICT plays in logistics. I'm asking this question against the background of our everyday experience. For those, for instance, who fly in Nigeria, you can see this is probably the only situation where you check in your luggage, and then before you board the flight, you are asked to come and physically identify your luggage on the tarmac. You identify, you tap it, and then even the baggage handlers, they will be greeting you, good afternoon, sir, safe flight, sir, safe flight, sir. Elsewhere, elsewhere, I mean, you have several stops, you're flying within, then you have several stops. Sometimes, by the time you land, and it takes a while from your landing gate to the carousel, your luggage is already out there. Yes. So, what is the role of ICT? Because we heard that they said that they were all going to the airport to go and supervise. Is this something you see physically, or that there are other ways that ICT could actually assist with logistics?
Yes, thank you very much. So basically it has to do with the maturity level of our ICT in Nigeria. Of course, we are developing, and so also is our ICT. Let me quickly take us down the lane on how INEC has matured to where it is today. INEC, of course, started with manual registration of voters. Then we see a slight shift to registering voters and an optic magnetic reader, where they register voters, and of course they scan it and the computer reads the data. Then following it, we saw INEC using 2 fingerprints for biometric authentication, and of course the recent improvement of capturing the 10 fingers. So if you gradually look at this, there's a maturity part that we need to take to be able to give a seamless automated process. So considering the INEC election, we know where we want to be. That is fully automated. You being able to vote wherever you are, collation being done automatically. But as it is now, we are not there yet. So some of the challenges we have been faced has to do with where we are. Now at NIDA, we have foreseen where we want to go. And the government too has its own backing with NIDA, where it requests that every agency should come to NIDA for clearing to make sure that all our ICT projects are in line with the overall goal. So as it is now, some of the challenges being faced by INEC has to do with, what will I say, some of an island attitude where INEC thinks they want to do all by themselves. Of course, you'll agree with me, if it is biometric authentication, the best we have so far in Nigeria is BVN. And of course, if you look at that, a whole biometric is based on the authentication algorithm. BVN does 10 fingers, and of course that is good enough. And the failure rate is slightly less than 0.02 using BVN. But of course, INEC is rebuilding the wheel again by doing its own biometric capture. So in essence, what I'm saying is there has to be collaboration. If you have to delegate some other ministries that have mandates to do certain parts of your logistic issue, there's really no need you reinvent the wheel again.
Well, yeah, also, thanks. But Ajijola, I would like you to also speak to this. You know, how much infusion of ICT could we have had for a large-scale operation such as the general elections with regard to logistics?
Well, unfortunately, we are a bit blind because we don't actually know the degree of ICT deployed by INEC specifically for logistics. But coming back to the challenge that you painted with bags at the airport, I think this is a very good example of technology is not the problem. It's people. It's our culture. And we don't mean culture in terms of tradition, but our way of doing things, our attitude to things, our approach to things. So while technology has or presents a lot of opportunity for improvement, I want to caution us that it's not necessarily the panacea, because technology is developed by people, for people, and it's about people. So people are the common element. And unless and until we get certain aspects of our people right, in terms of our perceptions and culture, really there's a limit to what technology can do. But again, there have been many people who have raised the specter of, can we begin to look at e-voting? Can we begin to look at deploying voting machines? These are options that we do need to investigate. But again, many people approach these things with rose-colored glasses, thinking that we will just deploy, problem solved. It's not that simple. The technology itself, as Malam Ahmed has pointed out, not just in Nigeria, but around the world, has not sufficiently matured for the level of e-voting that people believe they want. People may point to some examples, but almost every one of those examples has had challenges that, after review, have actually undermined the outcome, which comes back to where I started, which was, do we have confidence in the process? So it doesn't matter whether the process is technology-driven, manually driven, but certainly if you say that you want to manage, I think, 120,600 plus polling units to get something there and back, clearly you need help. And that help is technology. And if I may just end on one thing that we all need to think about. There are organizations in Nigeria that can get liquid content only to the remotest village in Nigeria and get it back.
That's logistics.
How do they do it? There are lessons from this.
Yes, just before we bring in Mr. Ibrahim, you talked about being blind to the degree of ICT deployed by INEC.
For logistics.
For logistics, yes. We know that, I mean, INEC has told us, look, we're using PVCs, we're using smart card readers. Can you give us? Yes.
But that's for the election in terms of the voting, not necessarily for the logistics of getting the voting materials to wherever they need to go and back to basically the counting centers.
What would you want to see? What would you love to have,
certainly there needs to be a lot of systems that provide some kind of monitoring capabilities, evaluation capabilities. I think also that there needs to be systems that allow INEC to have a better insight, for example, into the time requirements. Because there are many a time that in Nigeria we are planning something and we say, oh, it takes a day to get something to Port Harcourt. Yes, it may, but this is Nigeria. Let's be realistic. Let's budget 3 days. So I think the logistics people will be able to address those kind of issues. Again, please let us understand, technology in of itself is merely a tool. It is getting the logistics process right that is the critical issue, in my opinion.
All right, Abdul Hakim, thank you very much. Let's return again to the logistics gurus. That's Mani and Ibrahim, in our Lagos Network Center, you already gave a broad overview of the issues involved in logistics. And you were hinting at an earlier consultation between INEC and some of the logistics providers in the country. What could have gone wrong? Ahmed here was talking about some INEC perhaps operating as an island, in other words, operating in silos without really broadening out. Give us, from your own perspective, can you break down what probably just happened with what occurred on Saturday, leading to the postponement of the elections. First, it would appear, this is just from reading and then seeing the pictures and so on and so forth, that all materials first will arrive in Abuja, maybe at the airport or at some location, and then you now start taking from Abuja to transport, to warehouse, to the last mile. And what space of time? What could have certainly, I mean, even if you're not a logistics expert and you're familiar with some of these transportation issues, you would assume that there will be bottlenecks that could cripple your best plan. So in your own estimation, give us a picture of what happened, even though you were not an insider, and what could have been done right.
Yes, thank you. I mentioned earlier there may be a lot of issues behind the scene that we are not aware of. But basically, like my brother, the white-robed brother in the studio with you there said, there has to be lead time in whatever INEC is doing. You can't wait until the last minute expecting that you can always deliver. There may be bottlenecks, there may be issues of force majeure that may arise and things like that. And in fairness to INEC, I believed that after the consultation with the logistics concerns, they may have gone back to the drawing board. We are not privy to that. But after saying that, I think we need to look at our peculiarities in the country. INEC is contending with a figure of about 80 million voters. And if you look at the space that they need to cover, that is the broad space of our polity, and of course, coupled with other things like Mani has mentioned, transport logistics. There is so much decay in our transport infrastructure that may not be able to support what the requirements are in the logistics arrangement for election in Nigeria. Of course, the security situation is also an issue. Now, having understood that we have these challenges on the ground, I have mentioned earlier, in the planning process, INEC must be transparent, because that is the only way they can have inputs of other organizations. Not only inviting people to a conference and they profile suggestions, and then that is the end of it. And I mentioned also earlier that auditing is key. They must have an audit scheme in place that would always appraise the situation at various times. And wherever they are derailing, they can come back on course. But you see, I also have the strong belief that INEC must infuse professionalism in their logistics value chain. I doubt if INEC has professional logisticians in their value chain, as at now, who can confidently handle these assignments for INEC. If they don't, like Yahuza said, Ahmed, it can be outsourced. You can engage professionals that can do this for you. This is a national assignment, and we're all Nigerians. We should be able to contribute positively to the success of any election in this country. Otherwise, these problems will continue to arise. And for you to come up at the last minute to say that you are going to postpone the election, that is a very, very expensive decision, which I believe if we had been more open at the beginning, maybe we would have been able to avoid that.
Just still staying with you. Earlier on, you talked about accidental and intentional mismanagement of logistics, you know, within this context. Can you give us insights? Can you give us a picture of what you mean by these two terminologies?
Now, accidental could be that by way of probably the INEC personnel are being careless, kind of, and then you end up truncating the logistics chain somewhere. And intentional could be that deliberate effort by individuals to truncate or sabotage the activities of INEC towards hosting the elections in Nigeria. And what I'm impressing is that INEC must bear these things in mind in order for them to forestall happenings in that regard. Of course, you cannot rule out the fact that people would come out one way or the other to see to the destabilization, most especially when you involve politicians at different stages, and they would want to see that they win by all costs. So there may be intentional mismanagement where the INEC personnel are compromised at different stages, and with that happening, I think it will mar any election that INEC is trying to execute successfully.
Okay, Jibrin, thanks a lot. We'll return to you subsequently. Let's come back to Mani Chuboju. Now, the trigger for all of this, of course, is the logistic snag that INEC got into, say, at the national level. And we know from the conduct of elections in this country over the decades that, again, as I've had cause to say on this program, somewhat jokingly, that you can actually draft a report before the election, and every other thing else will fall into place. Namely, there will be late arrival of men and materials at the polling stations. Some of them, they will come, they will not have the right materials for the right polling station, for the right polling booth. All of these are issues related to logistics. So at the subnational level, where you have varying terrain and therefore varying challenges, what is it that we could do to forestall? Because now we are hearing that materials have been moved out. They have reached all the states. By Saturday, there's probably no guarantee that voting will start 8 on the dot in all the polling stations, 120,000 or several, or more. What is it that needs to be done now to, as it were, get you to the last mile?
Kingsley, this still comes down to the issue of the management of the electoral system itself. It is an ongoing historical problem for Nigeria, and it is just simply untenable that every other generation have been confronted with the utter failure of the management of the electoral system. In this instance, as in many instances, logistics is a recurring decima. On this occasion, we are being told it is even bad weather. Bad weather. You begin to ask yourself, is it tornado? Is it hurricane? Is it tsunami? What kind of weather were we besieged with? The simple thing every elementary school child knows in Nigeria is that we have harmattan in the January-February season. Even that harmattan, can some of our planes land? Can some of our helicopters land? Can they deploy military aircrafts when they are given almost unfettered access to any resource, any national resource that they need? Can some of our railway lines operate under harmattan season? Can't we operate our waterways under harmattan season? What is this bad weather? Listening to the INEC chairman, the more you see, the less you understand. The more you hear, the more you begin to disagree. The things he says and the reasons he gave to me are even, the more they get put into the political arena, they become like metaphysics. You don't believe it, like witchcraft. When you come at 2:30 a.m. to start making announcements, it's like voodoo. Why not during the daylight, where everybody will hear you and listen and give us 3 weeks notice and let everybody comprehend and reason with you? And to make matters worse, you don't even apologize. You use the wrong adjective, like I regret. That is so patronizing. It is a wrong adjective. It is insulting. But more importantly, it makes a caricature of you using the adjective, because it makes you look like somebody from the medieval era. But still on logistics, sir. Logistics is something that is easy when you have the resources for it. Pure water goes all over Nigeria. We have all these, what do you call it, multinational corporations, beverages distributing their wares, which is almost as heavy as INEC matters, materials nationwide, and they deliver it next day. We have FedEx operating in Nigeria. We have DHL operating in Nigeria. And they deliver next day, on time. And they track these things. They even give you tracking number that, look, log into your iPhone or BlackBerry, or you see the tracking of your equipment. Furthermore, sir, still on logistics, part of the problem is INEC self-inflicted. When you go and register 91 political parties, you tribalize the process. I respect multi-party system, but not multitude party system. When you have 91 parties, 91 means you have, if they were going to place all their candidates, you have over 23,000 candidates. You are printing 400 million ballot papers in one election, presidential alone. And then you have 640 court cases all over Nigeria, 640 court cases all over. This adds to the internal inefficiencies that we are seeing on display in a very disgraceful form.
Okay, I know Ajijola and of course Yahuza. Let me just hold you a while. I want to bring in Mr. Jibril Ibrahim from our Lagos Network Center. You know, apart from the issue of bad weather, you know, which of course INEC mentioned, and other factors, we also hear misplacement of election materials. For instance, materials meant for one particular state, you know, being seen in another state. Under what circumstance can such logistic mistake be made?
Yeah, thank you very much. I remember when we participated in the workshop that was organized by INEC for this election logistics, we had advised categorically on the steps to be taken, which covers the whole gamut of the logistics value chain, starting from procurement issues, warehousing and housing, marking of materials, how to stack election materials, how to distribute them, identifying personnel that are responsible for each kind of material, where they are headed to, and identifying and marking vehicles that are involved and things like that. I don't know how it was actually implemented, and the implementation, if you remember, I say, is a key stage of one of the cardinal pillars for the implementation of the election logistics. And we know, we're very much aware that they had gotten into some collaboration with NATO associations, that is transport owners associations in the country, so that they can use their vehicles. But I'm not too sure how that is or was managed. And in the sense that even if you take a cluster of vehicles to deploy your or to distribute your election materials, you must have a professional who is going to supervise and coordinate the movement of those vehicles. I understand as in some states, some of the drivers stood and said they were not going to proceed until they are paid and things like that. A lot of these things can bring delay if you do not put real core professionals to supervise and coordinate these things. But clearly, marking of materials, designation of personnel, marking of vehicles that would convey the materials, even designating and marking the delivery points and evacuation points, and in the reverse order for retrieval were the things that we discussed in that workshop. The implementation, I say, I cannot say what really happened. And I think if they had followed the advice, we would have gotten it right.
Well, Jibril, I'm tempted to still stay with you because at the subnational level, dealing with the last mile delivery and therefore the commencement of voter accreditation and voting, because those are some of the challenges that you find usually at the polling station where materials and personnel arrive late. What can be done? All this arrangement of, you know, getting in touch with some associations and perhaps the absence of professional experts in logistics. What would you advise now? Because I'm sure that the persons will just be waiting for the next excuse on Saturday, you know, before something begins to happen.
Like we mentioned earlier, there must be lead time. INEC must go into lead time in distribution of these materials. And by the time they get to sub-national levels, they must have designated areas, well-secured areas that they can warehouse these materials, not necessarily delivering them on the very day of the election. They should go closer to the polling stations. And the people, the personnel involved in this value chain must be trained to understand that there is need for efficiency in the way they conduct the distribution exercise down to the polling stations. And of course, where you have people who do not know how to handle this, you are bound to have these problems. But INEC must make sure that right from the national level down to the INEC official who will be handling the materials at state level and at local government levels and at polling units must have that basic training in order to understand the need to carry out logistics activities efficiently and not at their own time or their own pace. They must understand the importance. So attitudinal training is also something that they must imbibe in their personnel.
Adejola, you wanted to raise a point?
I think I'd like to build on the capacity building thread that Mr. Jibrin has touched on. But first of all, let's understand. Clearly, there's a tracking problem. Because if something for state X goes to state Y, clearly there's some kind of tracking problem. Now, having said that, Mr. Kingsley, I think you asked, what do we do? My thinking is that there are two things that we need to look at, or INEC needs to look at. One, ever before elections, the date comes up, they need to embark on drills. Remember, logistics, I said, was a military science. And how does the military deal with these things? They continuously go through drills. Because it is when you go through drills, you go through the process, you repeat the process, you find the flaws. So that would be my first area moving forward. The second area is that I believe that there is a need as a system, whether it's technology or otherwise, to vaccinate the system, if I may use the health example. How does vaccination work? You introduce basically some kind of organism that you don't like at a less potent form, and the body builds a resistance to it. So if you forgive me, I will give you an example from my profession. On February the 20th, this month, the Electoral Commission of Switzerland is embarking on a vaccination process for its electoral technology. And it goes from the 20th of February to the 2nd of March. What are they going to do? They are going to call hackers to come and try and penetrate the system, to break into it, to change things, to adjust things. And the reward ranges from $100 to $30,000. And the hacker, in order to get this reward, has to document what they've done, what the vulnerabilities are. It is when you do this, then you can now go back and re-engineer your system, whether it's manual or technological, to be better. And one of the challenges we have in this country, and it's not just INEC, it's across the board, is that we wait, for example, 4 years, then we bring it out of the cupboard, blow off the dust and say, let's deploy. No, you have to vaccinate in advance. You have to do these drills in advance. You will realize at some point, oh, something needs an update. Oh, yes, we updated it, but the update itself brings in another flaw. That's how you actually move your technology and your processes forward.
All right. Abdul Hakim, thank you very much. The aspect of inoculation that you have raised, of course, that has to do more with ICT. We will come back to that aspect, especially the card reader, and what else needs to be done, considering the time lag that we now have versus what was supposed to have taken place on the 16th of this month. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll also take some of the tweets and then get back to our guests.
Welcome back. This is Good Morning Nigeria, live on Africa's largest TV network. That's the NTA. And we're discussing election postponement, logistics, and, of course, operational matters. We have quite a number of tweets. And if Kingsley, can we start?
Well, Laura Afasi has this first tweet. It says, logistics issues may not be the remotest reason for the postponement. Rather, it could be a soft word to suit our collective temper. Has INEC successfully recalled the sensitive materials already on transit before the eventual and unfortunate shift of dates?
All right, Chris Simeon tweets, the logistic problems raised by INEC could have been avoided if its bosses truly understand what logistic operations involve in Nigeria and move election materials earlier than they did. Sadly, their decision to move materials late backfired, leading to bad publicity for them.
And this is from a Twitter handle, Cure My Nation. INEC should use the opportunity of the postponement to resensitize their staff. They should also enlighten them on the consequences that await anyone involved in electoral malpractice. This will make them sit up and do their work diligently.
All right, another one again by Mike Anyakwo, and it's with the words, logistic problems were made popular by Professor Nwosu when he was a lecturer chairman. What happened during his tenure is now history. The same words had resurfaced again. INEC must do the job. The commission was well mobilized by both executive and National Assembly.
Dele Jack Solomon has this tweet. Now, the legitimate questions Nigerians have asked include the following. At what point did it occur to INEC and its leadership that there were challenges of logistics? INEC has not yet offered satisfactory answers. It must now deliver to Nigerians credible elections on the 23rd of February and the 9th of March.
And Festus Akiboyewa tweets, the transport problems Nigerians face daily are enough warning signs for INEC not to leave delivery of election materials late. Government at all levels must be committed to improving our transport infrastructure across the country to reduce logistic problems facing Nigerians.
And Mohammed Satomi tweets, I saw on the NTA Maiduguri local news that sensitive and non-sensitive materials arrived in Maiduguri. It's now left to us to come out en masse on Saturday to vote for candidates of our choice.
And Akejo Lagbaju tweets, logistic is a word we try to avoid in best management practice. Rather, we tend to break it down to various components for easy planning and execution. I'm sure INEC should have done this to make it easy for the planning of the rescheduled elections.
And Jumai Tabak tweets, says, Nigerian spray Professor Mahmoud will block all those areas that will not allow INEC conduct free, fair, and credible elections. No more excuses.
All right, those are the tweets. We thank you. Don't forget, we have a couple of more minutes to go, so keep your tweets coming, and the Twitter handle at NTAGMN. Let's bring in, of course, Mr. Yahuza, if I may, Kingsley. INEC chairman said to us yesterday that, of course, the commission has successfully reconfigured 95% of the smart cards. Now, what are your thoughts? Are we likely to have any issues with that?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, quite okay. As you know, logistics too is not only transportation. It involves the deployment of ICT tools, the registration of voters, the collection, and then the transmission of data. Now, from what we have learned, the biometric, the voters authentication tool, which INEC has reconfigured, of course, I believe what they have just done is just to change the date so that collection of data and authentication will show the next upcoming election rather than the 16 that has passed. But close at NIDA, our business, of course, is IT. So, of course, we consider networking, cybersecurity, and the whole gamut of ICT. And we think at NIDA, what INEC, considering their maturity steps that they have taken, we believe that INEC will attempt to transmit election result electronically. Now, the government has issued a circular, a couple of circulars from 2016, 2018, and of course, even a presidential directive that all MDAs should submit their projects to NIDA. This is because NIDA has an overview of ICT status of Nigeria, and we're in a better position to advise INEC on what we deem is the best possible method of transmission collection. Now, we are able to predict and look at INEC might attempt to transmit election result via SMS. And of course, we all know SMS is not secured. But of course, if all these projects have been submitted and need a prior time, we'll be able to advise accordingly. Now, INEC has reconfigured their voters' authentication card. Is okay, since, but we believe it can be done better because, as I earlier said, the authentication algorithm matters a lot, where you go with your fingerprint, you put, and you have a very minimal error rate. So if you look at your BVN, regardless of wherever you go, once you put your thumb, it comes out. So you can see their own authentication algorithm is a bit superior than what we believe INEC has deployed. And unfortunately, as we earlier said, the closed-door attitude of not trying to call other agencies. Of course, we all love Nigeria and we want the election to go as successfully as possible. And we believe that we can give our best technology-wise and advise accordingly to INEC.
Okay, Yahuza, thanks. But still on ICT, this time on the smart card readers, Ajijola, there have been reports, in fact, right up on this morning when we were reading the papers and reviewing the stories, there have been all kinds of claims and counterclaims that, look, the smart card readers might be manipulated and so on and so forth. All of the allegations that would tend to impugn the integrity of the elections even before voting day. Are there necessary safeguards that should be in place now to ensure that right up to the smart card readers, because if the smart card reader fails or doesn't work, we are told there are no incident forms?
Quick answer, I don't know. And I think this comes back to some of the issues Ahmed has raised. Really, there needs to be a little more openness in the process. We can only assume that in line with best practice, some of these things have been done. But having listened to Ahmed, having listened to the two logistics experts, one would actually raise some red flags. Has best practice been followed? Because, you know, when you enter an aircraft, to go back to your airport example, and you see water leaking from the, overhead baggage, maybe there's a problem with the AC, or you see the chair in tatters, if the part you see raises red flags, you worry about the part you cannot see. And this is, but if I may also just raise an issue that from one of the tweets, and I think this is very, very critical going forward for INEC and for anybody going to look into the issues at INEC. We really need to know, honestly and truly as a nation, who knew what, who knew it when, and what did they or did they not do about it. Because it is possible that the chairman himself might have been misinformed about the status of, the logistics preparedness. It is possible that the chairman might have been informed about the tracking challenges where certain materials have gone to the wrong place. But having said that, that is all the more reason you need to have this postmortem. You need to be able to know who knew what and when.
That's fine. Thanks a lot. Mani, what we are hearing now about the movement of materials would appear to concern the national elections. That's to say the presidential and Senate and House of Reps elections coming up now for the rescheduled date on the 23rd. I haven't heard that perhaps that's part of the materials they are moving now with regard to the other elections that have been rescheduled to the 9th of March. What would be your suggestion, assuming those materials are not part of the consignment already being moved? What should be, what should be your suggestion so that we don't get near those ones?
we still retain the conversation around planning, execution, and monitoring. Those are issues that may have been poorly implemented. The implementation process. They have to look at their processes, their auditing, and their monitoring. And it has to be tweaked in such a way that, or tuned in such a way that it will be efficient on this occasion. They have to start looking at the fact that they can't deliver on the same day. They have to act maybe 2 or 3 days in advance. There's nothing wrong with that. They have hubs. They themselves agree that they have 5 particular geographical hubs covering Abuja, Maiduguri and Yola, Port Harcourt. Port Harcourt covers southwest and southeast. And they mentioned this other hub. I think, is it, I've forgotten the fifth hub. That covers, I think, Kaduna also, that covers Kano, sorry. Kano is the 5th hub. Now, they have to place these things there in a geographical location that will be easy to redistribute. And the issue of redistribution is also sensitively a logistical matter. Yes, I agree with my brother Ajijola that it is like a military science that needs to be drilled, repeated, and sometimes, like he said, inoculated. Now, we've had clear cases of failure now. We've had clear cases of failure 2015. We've had failures 2011. We have failures 2007. And going back, we've never had it right. And can't we get it right this time? Yes, this other Professor, no, the one, not Jega. Jega recovered from his wobbling and performed well. Chances are Mahmoud may recover and perform well. But we still insist that the issue of logistics are, I'm sorry to say, rather elementary that they should not overlook. Elementary in the sense that you will move these materials, you move your personnel, you move ICT equipment to support them. These are issues that they should have dealt with days in advance, even weeks in advance. Besides, they have 4 years of planning anyway, and we have to stop this fire brigade method, whereby they do reruns, go to courts, do registration, and then 4 years later, they remember that we have to deliver materials the next day. That is not good enough. Importantly, in the INEC chairman's, one of his addresses, he was more or less beating his chest, showing how much hard work they have to do, register 84 voters. 84 million. 84 million voters, sorry. They have to deal with nearly 200,000 polling booths. They have, ballot papers in their hundreds of millions.
Do you think he's overwhelmed?
The point I'm trying to make there is not. India register about 840 million voters. You register 84 million voters, and you are making it look like you're doing such hard work. The geographical area Nigeria has to cover is less than 1 million square miles. India covers 3 million square miles. And then Mahmoud stands there making it look like, oh, he's doing such hard work. You're doing such hard work, but you admit in the preamble of your address that you're giving sufficient resources. If you're giving sufficient resources and you organize, you plan, you deploy them well, you monitor, you should be efficient, not inefficient. And when you are inefficient, you should please have the courtesy to apologize. He still has not apologized. He owes us one.
Well, Mani, thanks. You're back again on this, but thanks. Let's return to Jibrin Ibrahim. Jibrin Ibrahim in Lagos. We're talking about what we know, and that I asked the question that it is probably the case that the sensitive and non-sensitive materials that are being moved around now concern the presidential and National Assembly elections. A good thing they have a lead time of about 2 weeks, but we do know they are dealing with reverse logistics. After that, everybody will be talking about results and comparing the results, and of course, plus all the noise you will hear about those who are defecting based on the outcome of the elections. What, in your opinion, ought to happen now? Yes, we know that there will be governorship elections in 29 states, but you're going to have elections in all the states of the Federation with regard to the state houses of assembly, and in particular also the FCT. Can we afford to get that wrong as well on the 9th of March?
Not forget, as you mentioned, that we will have to also contend with the reverse logistics side of it, and that should not becloud INEC's line of thinking and implementing or executing the next elections that are coming up 2 weeks after. It would be wise for them to start the process now. Like Mani said, they have sub-stations in the various sub-regions of the country. And we are very much aware that they use central bank vaults to warehouse most of their sensitive materials. In fact, almost all their sensitive materials. And if they can distribute these materials in very good time to these central bank votes in every state, I believe in every state there is a central bank branch, so I believe if they can distribute them to the central bank branches in very good time, and then they will have to contend within good time with redistribution down to the local government levels and to the polling stations as at the time that the elections are going to hold. So we still have time now, and I believe if they start in good time, they should be able to succeed, and there shouldn't be any problem with regards to distributing the materials, both sensitive and non-sensitive. But I want to state that they must, as a matter of, if they have not done by now, I'll be surprised, that they have appraised all that has happened in the last 1 week or 1.5, and try to see that they have blocked the loopholes, they have taken care of the lapses, and such that this thing will not arise for the other election that is coming up, that is the state elections. But I will continue to appeal to INEC. They must institutionalize both self-audit and independent audit, that we could introduce into it what Ajitola has said, vaccination strategy in order to play the devil's advocate so that you can strengthen your position.
Let's come back here. Thank you, Mr. Jibril Ibrahim. Let's quickly take our closing remarks now. Hakeem,
yes,
going forward, what must INEC do now to build trust, of course, with regards to the, other elections? And, some very strategic players also recommended unbundling of INEC. Probably INEC has too many things to do, and that probably cost us this embarrassment.
Ooh, okay, let me start with my final conclusion and then go to the question you asked. Excellence is a journey, not a destination. So INEC needs to, and the rest of us in Nigeria have to appreciate that that excellence is something we will strive for. Yes, we may fall down from time to time. Like I said, we need to be more tolerant of failure, but not tolerant of incompetence. Now, having said that, the issue of unbundling, I think, is something that we could think about as a society. However, before we start to unbundle, there are some things we need to get right first. For example, when you go to vote, are you whom you say you are? And this comes back to the identity management issue. If we can get that right, and I would argue from my own insight that we are beginning to head in the right direction on that. But if we can get that aspect right, it will offload a lot of pressure and overhead, I believe, on INEC. And actually, if you look at the National Identity Card, because it has quite a sophisticated chip mechanism, your voter identity can actually be stored there. So automatically, not only have you saved money, but you've also saved processing complexity. That's where I would start.
Atijola has always harped on that, the fact that you have multiple locations for capturing personal identity, personal data, and so on and so forth. But what you just raised now is an issue that clear.
Another day.
We'll have to deal with on another day. But Yahuza, let's also get your closing thoughts. As politely as you have tried to express some regret that the INEC does not appear to have consulted sufficiently with NIDA. Is it necessarily the case, this is a political question, but is it necessarily the case that INEC is playing up its independence in the National Electoral Commission to the extent that even if there is in-country expertise, it shuns it and then just goes on a tangent of its own?
Yes, thank you very much. Now, let me just quickly join with what Mr. Jijola said on standardization. If you go to any of INEC's website, there is, mostly website, if you go, there is HTTPS. This shows you that communication is secured. But I tell you, check any INEC website, you'll see there's no HTTPS. Now, a case to worry is the voters registration identification website, where I go in, if I get your name, your age, which of course I can get from Google, as soon as I put it in, I'm going to get all your details, your polling units, your VIN number, what have you. Now, on the issue of INEC independence, in my own opinion, INEC independence is on its own major function, which is the conducting of election, the registration of voters, and there are laid down rules on how you procure equipment. You are a government establishment. You are bound by government circulars. If government issues circulars, of course, you must respect circulars. The circular government issue that says everybody must come to NIDA for clearance. We have ICPC. ICPC is an independent commission too, but they do send to NIDA. CBN comes to NIDA for clearance. So we really fail to see where the independence of submitting yourself to standardization comes into play. Yeah, so I would like to close by saying that collaboration is the key. No one single entity can do it alone. Of course, if it is biometric, if it is security, if it is health, we all know where we need to fall back to.
All right, Ahmed Mustafa Yahuza, I'd like to thank you, Head Computer Emergency Readiness and Response Team at the Nigerian Information Technology Development Agency, NIDA. Thank you very much. Let me also appreciate Abdul Hakim Ajijola, of course, who is a Chair Consultancy Support Services.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Mani Ochuboju, who is a transport expert, very vibrant one, passionate one. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And Jibril Ibrahim, President, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport. We appreciate you. Thank you for joining us from Lagos. But before we allow all of you to go, we have more tweets.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, we are pressed for time, Claire. But the tweets, they came in a torrent. The tweets were delayed. I mean, what was happening? We were taking a cue from...
Okay, let's
quickly... We just acknowledged the names, Claire.
Okay.
Salihu Babayi tweeted... Ilya John Boboy, Sunday Michael Amakoji, one of our regulars.
He said it was a shock of the decade.
Yeah, that's right. Bankole Adesina, Sari Oyego, Shadrach Haruna, Mustafa Buka Kolo, Jumai Tabak, and of course, Awunuji Joshua, that's Metro, Cecilia Okurama, we already read one of hers. And of course, several others that are here would like to thank you for your tweets. Terry Abdul Karim Zekeri also had a tweet. And Claire?
Yes, that's one very one from Bankole Adesina, and it's an interesting one. It says, NT appears to be basking in a new oxygen of life, especially in this political dispensation. Interestingly, positively impacting on his professional reportage and quality of discussion. He now tunes into NT, of course, this program regularly. Thank you, Bankole Adesina.
All right, so that's it for us in our conversation segment today. We'd like to thank all our guests once again. Claire already signed them off. Let's go over now to our sports desk.
The draw for the 2019 FIFA Under-20 World Cup will take place on Friday, February 24, in the city of Gdynia, Poland, with Nigeria's Flying Eagles among the 24 qualified teams that will know their group opponents. The biennial competition will be staged in 6 Polish cities from 23rd of May to 15th June 2019. The Flying Eagles are one of the 4 African countries that will compete for honors at Poland 2019. The other 3 are newly crowned continental champions Mali, Senegal and South Africa. Paul Aigbogun's men took 4th position at the just concluded Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations in Niger after losing to Mali in the semi-final and also lost in the 3rd place playoff to the Majita of South Africa. Aigbogun and his charges will look to become the 2nd African countries to win the FIFA Under-20 World Cup after Ghana, who won it in 2009.
Right, that does it for us today. Don't forget, this program enjoys a repeat broadcast later today at 5 minutes past 5 on NTA News 24. We are on GoTV channel 46 and DSTV channel 419.
419, that's what she said on DSTV. My name is Kingsley Osadala. Thanking you for being with us on the program today. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning.